Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Awakened Reflections. With me, I have Allera Dawn, also known as the modern day high priestess. And in this conversation, I believe that it will reach those who need to hear this message, the right people with the right message at the right time. And I'm excited for you to really embrace and resonate and feel the wisdom and love that Allera is going to be sharing. We had a little brief chat before I pressed the record button, and something within me deep down knows that this is going to be a very powerful message to be shared from her, and I am excited to see where this conversation goes. Allera, how are you feeling today?
I'm really good. Thank you so much for inviting me on. I'm excited to be part of the new season and rebirth of your podcast.
I'm delighted. The pleasure is all mine to have you on here. And once again, shout out to Threads, the Instagram companion app. It's been connecting me with a lot of really amazing beings recently. And yeah, shout out to that platform. And so, first thing, we just before we press record, we are talking about healing and the stages of healing, because we are multi-dimensional beings, and I think we could start there as a very powerful way to start this podcast, this conversation is that where does healing truly take place? Where does it truly start? What is the root work of it all?
Yeah, so let's see where this wants to come in at. So I think let's just look at it in the context of the spiritual awakening and understanding that we all orchestrate our, at soul level, pre-birth agreements to come in to a family constellation. We can imagine a matrix. And that group of souls we've been in many different lifetimes with. And that means that we have agreements with them where we've not forgiven them. Therefore, we've got this kind of karmic entrapment stuff going on. And amongst that group, we're all seeking some level of evolution. But we've all been through incarnating again and again and again, many veils, many forgetfulness, often hurting each other. And also to understand that Earth is one of the densest planets, 3D templates. So that means that we forget ourselves, we forget our connection to source. And really, this whole journey is about this realization that we aren't separate from any others and we're not separate from source. But before we come in, we're only going to understand contrast if we kind of make agreements that we will learn through other experiences. To learn forgiveness, we will often need to experience the contrast of the pain. And this is the stuff that we don't really get told about, but these are like pre-birth agreements and our karmic load that is kind of woven into every soul stream experience that we have on earth. So if you can imagine, we come in, and even from literally conception right the way through the pregnancy, that's where we're learning about, that's where our body coding is. So whatever happened to mum in the womb, that's like that template. It's into the bones. So we are literally, when people aren't doing the ancestral work or maybe getting stuck with more mindset or therapy, we need to go deeper. And this is one of the key things, really. A spiritual awakening is going to have you kind of lift the veils, and you don't really know where this stuff will pop up because it's all divinely orchestrated. So you've chosen that experience. The separation experience of coming through the birth canal from spirit into form is actually also an embodiment trauma. So often, most people are finding it hard to ground or hard to be in the body. So before we've even landed, we've kind of got this experience going on that's coded into our bodies, into how our development of our energy field is happening, but also our first perception of us in this reality, this range of experience. And if mothers had maybe birth trauma or even just the hormones dropping and not having the support in that first period, it may well be she can't attach. Because if you can imagine that first interaction, it's really 18 months, but in that beginning stages, we are in tuning to our mother's nervous system. Mirror neuron system is helping us develop like empathy, and that's all to do with our brain development before we even look at energy. But our chakras are actually developed in the very early stages. So these experiences of landing onto earth, rooting into our physicality, are experiences of how mum and dad, whether they actually are able to attune to our needs and provide us with the positive experience we need. And bear in mind, nobody is 100%. Every one of us chooses particular lineages, woundings, and it doesn't matter if you're rich, poor, green, black, white, it doesn't really matter. Like literally everybody, every soul has it come in with a predetermined experience, and it will then play out. So we are loading ourselves up with these belief systems, wounds. They're called sacred wounds. They are core wounds. And they start really in this very early period from about conception to 7 years old. So our programming and conception of self is literally a culmination of these lenses. And because we are manifesting from spiritual, energetic, through the mental body, through the emotional body into form, our chakras are getting developed at certain age ranges. And this energy, these things are blocks. So we end up getting a trauma. Part of our soul fragments to be able to keep us in the body and keep us kind of still here. It fractures off because it would be too painful. And we create like a dense, stuck energy, and it's a defense mechanism. And it affects how we perceive the world, how we perceive ourselves. It affects the way our brain chemistry works, and it also affects really how much light we can hold. Is it safe to be expressed? Can I shine and be all of my multidimensional self like young children need to be? And often society and our parenting styles haven't supported that. And so all of us come in with these kind of sacred wounds that live within each chakra system. Usually, well, all of them have something. But essentially, it's the stuff that's so unconscious that we won't remember it until we start having adult relationships. And it's really when we start having the adult relationships where we've got this karmic kind of agreement to come in. And because in this universe, we will attract the other side of the coin. So you might have an abandonment wound, so you'll attract somebody in that's got a pattern of avoidancy. It was too much to have intimacy or to be, their experience of their needs being met as a very young baby was so intense that they would shut off and have to detach. So that might mean their mum wasn't in tune with, actually you're crying because you're hungry, so she changes your nappy. And it gets so long that you haven't had your needs met in a way that you need, that you basically have to find a way to cope and survive. So we've got these amazing different coping mechanisms and very multi-dimensional coping mechanisms as well. Like I've had near-death experiences as a young child. One when I was 4 was drowning. So when I'm kind of talking about these concepts, they sound very woo-woo. However, in this experience, I came into a particular lineage that holds many codes. So when we've got DNA of lineages who are witches, healers, they are the priestesses, it's natural for you to be able to have extrasensory awareness and certain abilities. So aged 4, I had a big trauma, near-death experience in a swimming lesson, and I was at the bottom of the pool. There were too many people in the group. This was getting back into like the 80s. And I remember being pulled out of the body with all of my teams of light and discussing, I have a choice point, an exit point. Do I stay or do I go back into the body and continue what has already been a really horrific kind of abuse-filled, very early childhood? And I remember obviously having these experiences. So I chose it. So I remember making the choice to come back in and then experience the rest of the period of my childhood until I escaped aged 18. And I remember being forced back into my body. I remember my teams of light, I was then fished out of the water, resuscitated, and then shouted at because the people that were running the pool were obviously not looking and paying attention, and I'd slipped through one of those ring things. So I then was getting punished whilst in that state, and also I had the trauma in my lungs and my throat. So it affected my physiology, but I'd also had a part of my soul that could not stay through the trauma of all that. So part of these childhood experiences, that blew me wide open. So I was still very connected in with the other realms, which actually I needed because of the other events that would happen through my childhood. I would be able to actually work with other teams. And I now understand that I orchestrated it so that I would be able to actually work through the density of the lineage I came with and survive it, quite frankly. So when we look at that kind of spiritual side of things, I went my whole life having certain belief systems encoded in me from that trauma. And it was only many years later that I then was able to actually go back and do the work I do now to not only release that stuck energy out of my body, I had to go in and get that soul part and I had to do the healing on that soul part before she could come back in. So these things are all lined up because now what I do is work with people on a very multidimensional level, and I help them with these sacred wounds that are essentially part of our earthly kind of template, our 3D template into the 4D, which people are going into now, which when we start the heart opening, we're really clearing this channel back to source. So connection up to source, connection down into Mother Earth. And of course, these wounds are within our energy field and our chakras, and they will get triggered, whether it's a relationship breakup, whether it's losing a job, or perhaps you have a Kundalini awakening and you've connected with somebody else. And, you know, I met my twin flame in 2015, and that blew my energy field wide open. My heart blew open, but I also had a ton of karma and all these very dark night of the soul, you know, really going into spiritual warfare kind of stuff. It was my next initiation. You now need to be initiated into handling the other side of things, so the dark and the light. So all of these experiences of healing, you line yourself up with the wounds because they support you in your soul evolution, your understanding, the deepness in compassion, the accessing the higher realms. They actually are the coding for our purpose, our soul purpose. If I'd not gone into some of those things, I would not be able to then retrieve my soul from other past lives, which has then brought on spiritual gifts that I need to help people with now. So it's like rather than me being the victim, I had to realize that actually the drama triangle of victim, rescuer, persecutor is only 3D. And this blows it out the water. Like, I can't be a victim if I remember saying yes and being pushed back in the body. You know, no matter how hard all of this stuff was, it was going to take me to the depth of understanding. Pain often means people will hurt others. You know, it's this cycle of pain, cycle of limitation, cycle of, you know, operating disconnected from divinity. And I came into a lineage that gave me all of that so I could understand it and alchemize it when the time came for me to wake up. And historically, people used to wake up. It used to be around the 27 years onwards. But now, the children that are being born are like star seeds that are lit up at higher vibration. They need to be kept psychically clear and awake because they're going to be our future kind of leaders on a planet that is at a higher vibration. So my journey has woven me through these different sacred wounds to learn not only to connect with different dimensional teams of beings that are actually experts, they fast track it. In 2015, when I met the twin flame, who is, it's very much, if you meet somebody, they're a catalyst for acceleration and healing. It then means that all of this stuff came up, including past life work. And that gave me access to angels, different guides, galactic beings, because it was like my teams came in when the time was right for the deepest healing. So I've kind of mapped out a very kind of my spiritual awakening, but woven it into attachment wounds, which affect the relationships, which are also the sacred wounds within our energy field, that we're actually being asked to work through, because then we open this gateway of the heart, and that's really going into high dimensional versions of self, no longer constricted by the lens of society or the programming. And this kind of reparenting that we have to go through, this maturity process, is also spiritual maturity. And that's really what's kind of happening for people in a spiritual awakening. And the soul will bang loudly on the door and often make lots of blocks when you're off path. And the frequencies that are happening, you know, being brought onto this planet means that more and more people are going to feel like the floor is coming away and their belief systems are being shattered. And that's the invitation to do this deeper work. And it doesn't have to be I mean, my viewpoint is deep roots, high branches. So it means that we have to be able to still be in the body, not just flying around with the galactic teams and the angels. We also need to get into the roots, because that's the liberation. And it's also linked very much into clearing for our ancestral lineage, because you've come in with their DNA and their blood. If you have blood and DNA in your body, which all of us do, we hold their money stories, their issues, and those kind of things, because we're here to alchemize it. And not one soul on this planet at the moment is a new soul. We're masters. None of us came in with this level of crap going on the planet without the expertise. And when we actually tap into soul gifts, which comes with really going through the initiation to like say yes to our teams to step in, our higher self to step in, we're actually given gifts that we've mastered in other lifetimes that we can use now to help our healing. So people's spiritual, psychic abilities will switch on, healing abilities, instant knowing. This is our default. This is the true human template. It's just that now we're waking up to it and switching it back on.
Wow.
A transmission, mapping these things.
Yeah, there is so many different avenues that can go down towards all of that you just shared with me and us, and it's so amazing because right there towards the end, I was going to ask you, uh, since the humanity's been really growing in population from like the 1900s, so the big boom there. I was going to ask you about were there going to be new souls that didn't have a past life to really draw upon it, and you just answered that question, which is an amazing synchronicity there. It's like you knew I was going to ask that question, you answered it anyways.
And also, just to add with that, there are souls that are on this planet, and I have met two of them at least in person, that have come in without karma. So
Mm.
some of the, and remember, the karma that they may well have had lifetimes in other dimensions, universes, not just this solar system, and the expertise that they have coming into, these are very highly evolved parents, basically, that are very much on the path of, we'll call it ascending their consciousness. So for them to have a child come through, it's very, very high vibrational. So it's with that relationship that the child could come through. And it's really important that their parents are not holding the shadow line density, because that would be often meaning the child comes in with it and the parent's going to project it. So if we proactively are working through our own stuff as a preconception point of view, we can actually then mean we are not passing this on to our children. So yes, there are children coming in like that. And there's also many, many different spiritual teams, beings, spirit babies coming in at different frequency levels that we may have had lifetimes with the Arcturians, the Pleiadians, or different timelines. And they want to come in not only because they are part of those that will be able to operate at a much higher level in the coming years, really 2030 onwards, but also that they hold the code, shall we say, to help humanity evolve into really 5D, 7D. So we're actually not just 5D. There's many people, I've worked on my 12D template. I bring in, ninth dimensional Arcturian High Council or different teams from different levels. But it wasn't just opening up and being a channel. I had to go in and do the healing work, rebuild the template so I could access it. So it's not just, oh, I'm flying high in the 5D. We've got to kind of bring all of it into coherence. So yeah, with the children, the it's very much a case of if the parents are able to liberate some of the denser pieces in the karmic line for the ancestors, then we can actually start birthing through many more starseed children, which are very highly sensitive, psychic, naturally.
And when you discover your this karma and your past lives, what's the process to discovering that? Is it channeled through someone else to tell you how it's supposed to work? Is it through some type of coaching, or is it just self-discovered?
Well, my way that I was set up was not the way that most people are set up. So I came in with a soul that basically wants to polarity integrate. So polarity integration is something that is a big missing piece on I think, most of the collective awareness. Why? Because it requires us to go into not just shadow, into dark lives, lives where we've been service to self, or we've been operating and hurting other people or whatever else. And in the quantum, that's all happening. So our ascension process means not only are we integrating like the fractured parts of our inner children and stuff like that, in these past lives, we are also going to clear up what we've done in those lifetimes and actually get that version of self to switch sides. And then we bring them and we polarity integrate them into this soul stream. And when we do that, we naturally go up in our frequency band. So the true ascension is actually being able to do that. My initiation was that my twin flame came in with a dark template, triggered all this stuff. It gave me massive insights into what was going on in my ancestral line that I hadn't known at the time. And 300 past lives got activated, which meant the dreams, the trauma moving through my body, flashbacks, people that were in my lives, including my boss at the time, getting triggered because she'd been my mum in a lifetime and sacrificed me. It was all this kind of weird, really dense, heavy stuff coming up. And at the time, I was working with different healers who were just like, you know, I've got galactic timelines coming on board. It was too much for people. So I would get a little clue from somebody that was working at the level of where they were, and it couldn't go any further. But because the onslaught of that karmic load was coming through me, there was no way out but through. So I was kind of massively switched on, initiated. And just before that, I'd actually gone to Gran Canaria. And Gran Canaria is part of where Atlantis was, one of the places. And when I stepped on that land, I activated a past life, but I also activated and reclaimed a soul fragment, soul aspect of myself. So overnight, I turned up there. I had an injury. I was hobbling around on crutches, got really drunk with my friend, as we normally did. It was for Christmas. And then overnight, it was like something switched. It was like my personality changed because that soul aspect came in and she's like, you're off path. Suddenly, it was like straight away, everything was being downloaded from this higher aspect of myself that had lived on that land. She had escaped the fall, the flooding. And I suddenly was switching on all these gifts and abilities I didn't know about. And I actually went vegan and teetotal overnight. So my friend was like, I've come away with this like party girl that we're going to have fun on this holiday. And suddenly she's like, I'm never drinking again. And suddenly I don't want to eat meat, fish, dairy, like overnight, the second day of a holiday. And it was like that shift. And then I had a Reiki session. And I was seeing all this stuff during the Reiki session, and the woman that was the Reiki master or whatever, she would basically shared with me what she saw, and I saw the same thing. And she's like, you know, you have a gift, don't you? You know, like she basically relayed to me something that I hadn't really put two and two together. It was just my normal. So I was meeting these teachers and people that were gradually put in my path in a very short period of time. And actually I've been sharing more of my awakening story actually over on YouTube because it's quite nuts. Like literally this stuff that was happening was fast tracking, and everything I needed to kind of get one step ahead of the next lot of stuff coming through was being brought to me. And whether that was people, information, and I would find that I would spend time with them, and immediately it was a code exchange. So I was able to switch stuff on or acclimatize with what they knew. And it would be like, I know that. And then suddenly download the information and I can do it. It was like this is actually, it sounds wild to the mental body, but actually we all hold codes and activations and transmissions that can switch things on within each other. And more people now that are channeling light language and have more awareness of this stuff probably have a knowing of it. But back in 2015, to like literally have all of this stuff switching on because I had to go into such deep healing work, it was on a spiritual initiation. And it is an initiation. And that was really also to step into rebirthing this priestess role, because she's both the initiator and the initiate. And that was really me being put through this experience. How do you keep your feet on the ground, keep a job, keeping the grounded life with all this wild stuff going on? And it was relentless for 2 years. And then I was given the guidance, you need to go and help people now. And I was a bit like, oh, I'm not ready, you know. And they were like, my teams were like, look what you've just done. And then I was resisting. So they started bringing me people, road traffic accidents, being told to take like a different route home, come out of the tube, suddenly see the accident and having to step in and do like sending somebody to the light, like the death portal work. It was wild. I was being taken into my day to day. Being on the tube and having spirit babies speaking to me and asking me to translate messages to their mother whilst they're sat there. It was literally like, if you don't step forward into your purpose, we're going to bring it to you. There's no way around it. So when I said yes, then everything got started for me to start to share all of this. So it's not none of my process was linear, but this also means that we can collapse time around thinking that you have to spend years healing yourself. You don't. If you are willing to understand that, if you are willing to get into that core wound or into the soul piece and have forgiveness for all those involved, and to actually allow that wound to clear and understand who you've been, you can heal all of this stuff in hours. And this is literally what I do with people now. Like, I've been working with somebody who has quite serious addictions and an eating disorder. In 2 weeks, we've gone in and done the stuff I'm talking about. She's eating. We've identified there's actually an issue, probably type 2 diabetes, that she's going to get addressed. And then she's basically starting to wean herself off some of the things she's doing. So like, that is, if you were going a clinical route on its own, that would be like wild. And this is where we are the liberators. So the choice, your desire for change, your desire to heal yourself, your desire to step into the unseen, but also take radical self-responsibility for yourself, that is really the healing. You know, and when sometimes we get to rock bottom or things are so hard, we're willing to do anything. And when we say yes to that, the people will often be brought to us. But we've got to be open for it. And that requires a level of trust that really will push us out of our mind and into our hearts and into this spiritual journey. So there's no set pathway for anyone. But what I would say is, ask for the help, ask for the people to be brought to you, ask your angels, ask your guides, pray, because that you're always being heard, and that will always mean that you will find the one that holds the door open for you, can bring you that code I talked about, can be that activator, can be the teacher. You know, like literally understanding, oh wow, actually, yeah, I get this, and I've had this happen. And you don't need to spend years, you don't need to stay in loops. That is our liberation, is that you choose to break free from the collective belief system of the way of healing, and recognize that you came here with a predetermined way of healing. And also, all those people that I brought in to help me, they agreed on a soul level to help me. So it's trusting, which is so difficult when we've been in the 3D way of thinking we have to do it all. We don't.
So, what is the relationship between free will and having that predetermined existence or blueprint for life? Is there a balance between the two? Like, what is free will and what is predetermined? Yeah, can you explain to me what your experience is of that?
Yeah, so I think if we go right the way back into, I mean, this is going to go deep, but collectively, humanity has had hijackings on our DNA, hijackings on our capacity to access our free will and sovereignty to connect to source, open up our channel, and that liberates us to be our multidimensional full self. So that means that this happened right the way back into like Lemurian times. It went through Atlantis, into the fall of ancient Egypt. All of us have been recycling, not being able to move past this karmic wheel, shall we say. And it's only been in the past couple of years where there's been such a collective shift and people are doing such deep work that it's meant we've broken through the ceiling and lots of other macro stuff has been cleaned up, that now we can actually start to operate with a level of free will. Because the way that this universe is kind of working, we can't manifest something if we've got a karmic load in the way. And this is really where we go from like the 3D manifestation teachings is really about personal will, when we're actually looking at moving into coherence with soul and source and really operating free will. So we're not doing harm to others and we are, operating within the natural laws. We have to clean up the messes we've made, the healing, that side of things, to create the spaciousness for the next level of self. And that really is the free will choice. And when we've cleaned up that karma, we will then notice. So often we get the test. We've worked through a big healing piece. You've dealt with some very deep wounding, maybe ended a relationship. You've heightened your self-worth. You've had that growth. Then you might attract in that person that comes in, and they might have a karmic agreement with you to go through a relationship and dance the same dance. You can now proactively go into the initiation, shall we say, and clear that contract with that individual, ask for karmic release, because you don't grow through dancing the same dance and going into that same pattern. So that means that we have free will to play things in the karmic way, which is very linear. It's getting into the muck again and being pulled into chaos and drama. But when we've evolved past that, we've learnt that lesson, we have the free will choice to then actually ask our teams and our soul for our next, like, really initiation, shall we say, the next part of our soul path and purpose. And that will align us with new people, opportunities, and experiences. Because often through the healing process, we're working through a lot of the early childhood woundings, and it's all relational. But actually, if you desire a soulmate or connection that is based in harmony, in higher dimensional connections, soul relationships based on growth, based on both of you coming together to support each other in growth, in more harmony, the higher your vibration and the less you are holding those dense wounds means you're just also not going to be in alignment with the karmic relationships or the way of doing things. And with the massive evolution Earth is going through, we're going to move away from operating in soul contracts because we're not meant to be locked by our karma. So we can clear our karma, obviously, by not just looking after ourselves, but we start to be of service. We start to have a need to give back. That is part of the proactive, like, karmic workings. We're on that service to others and humanity, but also we can go in and do the karmic clearing. Because if we're willing to look at where we've got dirty hands, what we've done, we can clear it up multidimensionally and drop away old timelines. And this literally will mean that you can change your life in a very, very quick time, because the minute you close one of those wounds out, or the minute you complete a piece of karma, the timeline drops. So suddenly there's no resonance. You're not drawn to those experiences anymore. You'll get insights, new ideas, more light, and suddenly things open up. So you can do that. You could be doing, as I did, proactively, because I'm not here to, like, I've been done that rodeo before, not here to repeat it. I want to progress and evolve and be here to be embodying new earth. But it meant I had to go in and do huge amounts of clearing to evolve myself to a place where I can hold the higher frequency without really being pulled around by the wounds. So free will is, it requires us also to understand that our thoughts do have power in manifesting. So negative thoughts towards other people is a form of psychic attack. It does create a level of quantum entanglement. So recognizing our words, our thoughts have power, not just our vibration. So I remember a few years back talking to somebody, and they didn't get that their thoughts have an influence, but they do. The more our hearts are open, we can feel what's in the field with somebody's intention. And again, all of these things are free will. We own the responsibility of our bodies, our vibration, what we think and focus on. That's part of the mastery. Or we get sucked into the matrix and we get addicted to stuff and put our energy there. Our free will is we have the choice of where we direct our energy.
What are some of those tools, tips, techniques to help us connect with our guides? I heard you mention, like, asking and praying. Maybe that's part of them, or the best ways to go about it. But it's like, how do we actually ask and pray? Is it saying things out loud? Is it writing it down? Is it just our voice in our head, or is it like a feeling, like an energetic frequency that we send out to the universe?
Yeah, I think that's really valid. So I think all of that has mentioned really coming out of the mind, which is kind of this just shout it out to the universe. But actually, when we're connecting with our guides, what we're actually wanting to do is have a two-way dialogue. We don't just want
Mm-hmm.
feathers from the angels. We kind of want messages or information. And that means that we need to be able to firstly open the heart as that filter, and that is going to allow us to access the astral plane. And it's about also really opening all the chakras, so we're running light through ourselves. We know that our energy field is pristine, so we're running light, or we've got a way of clearing our space. And when we're in our heart from a place of unconditional love and we feel safe and grounded, that's where we ask for any kind of spiritual guidance. When we're in chaos, we can't hear our intuition, we're getting ego. And what we're also often getting are spirits and lower vibrational beings, because it's like a channel, like a radio signal. So if you are feeling really low, you're probably not in the space to be asking business guidance from your spirit guides. And you have teams that help you with your purpose, your business, your money. Um, and really, it's that space of, I think it's about understanding relationships. So, in a normal human relationship, you would have a period of time to build trust. You would not give your power away. You would not think that they were better than you, because that's going to mean that you open yourself up for manipulation. So just as you in a human relationship take time, dialogue, how do I feel? What's the sensations when I'm connecting with this angel, this being, this guide? Same with them. So it's making sure that you've got discernment, and that I would say often working with one of the archangels like Archangel Michael, because it's such a powerful energy that is so present and so safe feeling, is to get very used to working with one and then build. And working with somebody else, I mean, this is kind of like if you worked with me, because you know that I'm holding the space, I'm mapping it all out and bringing them forward, you can kind of trust, oh, right, okay, I'm safe to acknowledge that sensation, or they're going to let me know that that is them because I'm going to, smell something or see something. And that is often, we feel safer to have that expansion into trusting and also translating. And that means opening up our channels like our ear chakras, our throat, the heart. So that channel and being open is really important, and being clear to get the multidimensional teams and awareness. And connecting in with that team is also connecting in with our higher self. And you can do that same process being in the heart though, and do something like autonomic writing. So ask a question and then just let the pen kind of just direct you and see what comes through. Everybody has different sensory awareness. So some people are more clairvoyant. But the thing is, what I realized is through doing work with literally hundreds of people in the past 8 years, when you do the deeper soul work, you clear the whole field. So everything gets veils lifted. So naturally, you become more, clairsentient. You can feel, your sensations are actually more attuned. You suddenly are getting more visions, and your dreams are coming through with more information. You find that you can feel energy, or that you have a more of a connection. That happens without trying to just open your third eye and focus, because I think there's psychic development that seems to focus on one thing, but we've abused our powers, our psychic gifts in the past. So often we have things that are deliberate to block us from seeing things clearly. So I actually feel that it's worthwhile working with someone who's going to show you how to set up protection, show you how it feels and how the process is, and then it's your job to then go and master it, to practice it so it feels natural, to then play with that experience, because that's then how you encode it in your uniqueness for yourself. But rather than saying, hey, yeah, I can get in a car and drive it, when you've never had a lesson and nobody's going to tell you how to work the dashboard, and it's, you learn quicker with somebody else, because you're also in training to my energy. So it means that that person's getting this like boost of light through the individual, but also the blocks that are in the way, you can clear that. So that's how I personally, when I work with people and in groups as well, they will naturally start their sensory awareness, their psychic development, their spiritual abilities switch on because we're clearing stuff out the way and they feel safe to do so. And safety is such a big thing when, you know, you're being called to do something that's different. So, like for me, if I'm going to speak with my teams, I always speak outwards. I don't just do it in my head. If I'm channeling, yes, stuff comes through, but I speak outwards a command. I'll say what code I desire. They will load the code through me. It runs through my field into the heart, into the throat, and then I speak the code. So again, that channel had to be open to do it. But definitely, it's what feels natural to you. And even the word prayer doesn't feel natural to everybody. And you're not begging something. You are not, the way that we converse, for me, they are my spiritual family. So there's a love there. It has to be a loving connection. They are there to support me, and I feel it, you know. And it was such a massive relief in those early days of my experience to know that I had this powerful team who literally were actually there. I wasn't on my own, but I had to be willing to start trusting and asking and calling them in every day, every morning. So part of my kind of clear my energy, clear my channel, call in my teams, ask for information, guidance maybe on my business, asking the questions, you know, what is of the highest service for me to share with my community today? Because that's going to be clean. 3D goes, how do I get more followers? How do I, but actually, if I come from that clean channel, that's 5D consciousness of how we're spreading energy, and those that need to get that message will find us. Like on Threads, you had a clean intention, and all of those people with that clear radar and that frequency came in and found you. That is 5D business, 5D manifestation. And that requires us to be clear with our intentions from the heart.
Yeah, that resonates to be the absolute truth because a lot of actions I've been taking recently, because in the past I would definitely think about it, I would go about it logically and conceptually, and like you talked about, the post that I made on Threads to connect with people who wanted to be on this podcast was straight from the heart. I can't even think about why I did it, but it was like one of those things that really I felt like channeled or flew through me. I didn't question it; I just allowed it to be, and I gave it its space, and it really is a very magical thing that's happened.
And that's so powerful because that is literally the new template, is to literally get into the heart with that clean space, clean intention. It's not coming from I want something from someone else. It's kind of being of service. And when we do that, we've got law of reciprocity. So you're doing something from a place of love, putting that energy out there. It will come in some other way to you. Whether it's the people you meet, the people you connect with, you know, it's this ripple effect. And that is really this new earth is being created through us operating like that.
So, would you suggest that it should be like a perfect balance of giving and receiving, or is there like certain seasons where it's suggested to be giving more or receiving more?
This is where it's really interesting, actually, because I was actually channeling the ninth dimensional Arcturian High Council the other day, and they were saying there's also, if we think it's about the belief systems, so human belief systems lock us into patterns of thinking, and also they can be the block to us to receiving. Many people don't take certain actions when it's Mercury retrograde because there is a belief system that it's wrong or bad. So it blocks that flow. Yeah. So they might get the nudge. You need to get this out there because, you know, cosmic order knows there's someone else that needs it. If I go, I'm not launching something because it's Mercury retrograde, yeah, I'm getting that clear download from source, then I am getting in the way from somebody getting the medicine I need or me putting something out there. So I would personally say that soul connection trumps it all. It's our belief systems around what we do and when we do it and getting in the way that creates the resistance. And that means, you know, sometimes we say there's a harvest season, and I've been really tuning into this because I live in the UK and it's very seasonal, you know, and, you know, we go through periods where, for example, like I've just been through the past 18 months of very big, deep, further level of karmic work and upper dimensional work for now. that's meant that my energy's been focused there more than probably, doing what I would do in the growth area of my business, because I've had to upgrade. Then I can be part of that upgrade and birth it out to more people. So there are seasons that align with maybe the soul things that you're working on. But I don't think when we start thinking there's any kind of formula, that's when we know that we're potentially influencing our own ability to give and receive, because there is no limitation really. It's more about um, us getting out of the way. If we can be the clear channel, that channel of light is frequency, vibration, codes, activation, information. It could be the next massive idea, so the more we get out of the way and just come from, as you say, that clear point, acting from the heart, it shifts us into a 5D way of being, which is not being led by horoscopes and necessarily what the planets are doing. And yes, they affect us karmically and energetically, but they are not the be all and end all. We shouldn't, and I actually noticed this as well, because we're getting a lot of subconscious programming through social media. So how many of us, when we're in the spiritual fields, are getting, today is this day and it's going to be like this, and subconsciously, your subconscious doesn't know the difference between what's real and what isn't. But that might not be truth for me at, on my consciousness journey, because I'm not actually focusing or experiencing that problem. But by me taking that in and kind of just consuming it, I'm bringing that in through my belief system. So I can actually be programming myself for limitation just by the stuff I consume, rather than the infinite possibility of what's actually out there. And I think this is a big piece with, especially the more sensitive we become, is understanding that we can actually be creating lower timelines just by what we're consuming online. So I would say personally, look at your beliefs around receivership, look at your beliefs around giving. As long as we're working in, pure intent, law of reciprocity, having also the capacity to receive, meaning if you have a business, do you have a product to sell? If you don't have a product to sell or anywhere to kind of people to come to, you haven't kind of got that channel there. But ultimately, if they give you an idea and you need to get it out there, and it's got a product to sell or a service or something, that's a money channel, because money is actually also coming in from a 5D consciousness. And the Arcturians actually brought through, it was like a 2-hour transmission, the wealth, luxury, and beauty grids that we were all operating under, which has been really wonky on Earth, have been dismantled. And so is the money grid. Lots of our money stuff is hooked into very old, ancient past, like timelines, like Egypt and stuff. What this means is we can actually anchor into the 5D grid of money, which is about resources and soul and ideas, and start to create from that, because it's not coming from this fear-based scarcity. There's not the conditions and the beliefs that block us. So we can actually tune in, like through the heart, through our intention, and receive the ideas that are going to be part of maybe the new earth. That's maybe a new way. Or even we can ask our teams to bring us the guidance that is aligned with the 5D earth that I want to be building towards. We can ask. We don't need to just sit there and kind of hope that we're given something. We need to get creative in how we're asking. And when we do that, we are using our free will, and we then will get, hooked into that grid rather than a lower grid. So it's also about that power of our word, power of our command, power of the direction we want our lives to go in. Sometimes we don't even know the power we have to actually change the direction, because we have to learn to actually direct the ship as well and ask our teams to move things for us.
Do you suggest that we ask only from a place where we've cleared our heart, or when we have good intentions, or when we're feeling in a good mood? When's the best time or best way to ask for that?
Yeah, that's when you're going to be in receivership of the information and the download that comes through you. When you're relaxed and you're not like, how do I make some money today? Because if I don't make my money today, then I can't pay the rent. That's got a very different, like, they can't get through to us. The more that you are actually opening up your crown, and also you have to give them permission. So it's about, building these relationships, getting into that normal state, so you know how it feels to just get that and receive. The more you can do that in that space, it will come to you. They will drop stuff into you. But also the flip side is, in an emergency, don't feel you need to be in the Zen state to get guidance. in an emergency, you just ask. Like, I remember getting off a bus in London in a quite dodgy road very late at night, and I had diamond earrings in, and one of them fell out. And I was just like, oh my God, it's pitch black. This road, there's been stabbings and shootings and God knows what else. And I remember being like, if I get my phone out and then start looking for it with the light, I'm going to draw attention to myself. I'm going to look really vulnerable. So I was just said, like, Archangel Michael, please help me find this earring. And literally that was it. Next thing you know, this guy turned the corner. When people go fishing, they have these massive big torches, like those kind of random things. We're in the middle of London. This guy comes along with one of those torches that obviously lights up like the whole pavement, and he comes walking towards me. He's like, oh, do you need some help? And I was like, oh, no, there it is. And I literally saw my earring, and then was able to kind of just go to my, I lived about 3 roads away, and I was taking a cut. He was angelic embodied. What's the chance of that happening? And I had another incident in the same house. And I lived in a place called Angel, actually, in London at the time. I was coming back during the day, and across from my house, these were like townhouses, and I actually saw someone with a balaclava in the house across from mine break into a window, and he saw me. And I was like, oh my God, like, if I go into my house, he now knows where I live. So I kind of went off back down the corner, and it was a very quiet road. There was only like one bus line, no one about. It was a Sunday. And I just asked for Archangel Michael. I was like, Archangel Michael, can you help me? Please help me. Bring me the police, bring me police. Please bring me someone that can help me. Next thing you know, I've got like cyclists coming along. I've got all of these people turning the corner and just starting to walk, because I know this burglary is going on, and he could have like a weapon or anything. And then this woman came along behind me, and I explained to her, don't walk around there, that's happening. I asked her to go and call the police. So she was calling the police. And within, I'm talking less than 3 minutes, all those people turned up, then 2 police cars. And I basically flagged down the police car, told them what was going on, and they obviously went and dealt with the burglary. So I didn't need to kind of make myself vulnerable being seen where I lived. So they will send and operate through other people, because that made no logical sense. But I've got such a deep trust that when you're in need and it comes from that energy, it's listened to, and we don't need to figure it all out.
What is the biggest message that you feel deep within, whether it's channeled or just deep within your own self, that you feel the need to express to the world? What is that message that is needed that you would like to express?
It's really about the power of the heart, and the deepest pain will give you the biggest access to your heart and the biggest access to this universal, unconditional everything of love. It's like literally, I've got goosebumps saying it. The experiences that I came in with, I would never wish on anybody, but the depth of forgiveness, knowing when I've actually been in the presence and my life's been in danger many times, and dealing with somebody who is very disconnected, or people disconnected from their divinity and evil, quite frankly. And knowing that regardless of all of that, I can still see the light in someone, and I can get into such a depth of my heart that I can see the wider picture of it all. And the more that we have that both compassion for ourselves and others, and this often is also where the past life stuff comes in, because we can't judge everyone. He's a psychopath, he's a narcissist, he's this, that, the other, because those are all constructs of wounds, constructs of pain, constructs of ancient pain that we are here to alchemize. And the power of the alchemy is that I will go so deep into it and transform it for everybody. And I'll pull that Jenga down so that we break this. And if I can help, like, I've worked with people that have escaped cults, had horrific abuse experiences in this and other lifetimes, all the rest of it. It's back to the heart. And knowing that that is our power. Our power is in the heart, because it immediately takes you into literally the multidimensional, the aspect of who you actually are. It reconnects you to source. It reconnects you to all aspects of self. It connects us into the deepest soul and universal aspect and truth of who we actually are. And that, in the presence of somebody, like literally, I've been in the presence of all sorts of experiences. And immediately, when I am in the presence of someone, I see the child, I see what's happened to them in their field, I see the stuff, I see it energetically, I see it whilst I'm stood with them. And it's actually, I can see the wounded parts, these aspects. And I'm like, that is why they did that. So if I can see that through the lens of my heart, and I can speak through the lens of my heart, and know that that's my superpower on top of the experiences that I've had, more people that can do that is how we're going to shift this planet, is to come into such deep compassion, not to override our own pain. We have to alchemize that. But in doing so, we liberate ourselves and liberate ourselves from people, experiences, and just this earthly plane of operating disconnected from our divinity. And then we drop the stories, because there's just as many wars and stuff that's gone on in our galactic brothers and sisters that we have to work through. And it's having, again, the same power and compassion there. It's dropping the judgment. And when we're back to that, it dissolves the law. And that's probably also why I've been able to, connect with so many of these kind of beings, because they need us to have our hearts opened. So the more of us that can come from that space, we all become the healer. We all become the psychic. All these things that seem like miracles, like the ascended masters and stuff we're doing, we have that capacity. And the more people that becomes the norm, we spread this ripple effect. We raise our consciousness, our emotional intelligence, our frequency, because more of us are operating from the heart. That's really the biggest message. Through everything, it's always back to that, always back to the love and the connection to source.
I ask everyone who is watching and listening to that response to re-listen to that, and once you're done re-listening to that, go back and listen to it again, and just for good measures, do it one more time. That was really beautiful. I got goosebumps, like seriously, all down my arms. I can see it. That's gonna be one of those things. Thank you. I really can't express the gratitude for you sharing that last message, because there is so much truth in that that's beyond me just mentally agreeing with it. That just feels very true and loving. And from what I understand, that is the truth and that is the way. And thank you for sharing that. Where can people go to contact you to find out more about you and what you do?
Yeah, so my website is www.allera.dawn. My Instagram is I am Allera Dawn, and YouTube, where I'm actually being guided to share more of my kind of like soul awakening stories, because I think they help others awaken and realize they're not on their own. And also more activations. Like, I am a channel, I bring through stuff so they can go and get healing and, tap into stuff that's going to break them out of the loops and stuff they're in. So over on YouTube, Allera Dawn. So, and I've got a podcast as well, which is Pure Light 1111 Soul Aligned Living on iTunes. So there's backlog back to about 2021 on that. But again, I've had many rebirths, and I think my podcast is about to go through rebirth as well.
Lovely. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for this wonderful conversation. I trust that many lives will be transformed and alchemized from the low vibrations to the high vibrations. And once again, thank you very much for this wonderful conversation.
Thank you so much for having me.